you've been talking about a regime change. What do you have in mind? I mean, are you talking about a full-fledged invasion of Iran? Would that be right? If America is
it's not
very
a matter
concerned
of
about
invasion.
sovereignty of other nations,
I don't know
yes.
why
Okay.
you
So
are
what do you mean by regime
interpreting.
change? Then how do you see that coming into effect?
Well, it's a domestic liberation movement at the hand of the Iranian people. It's a little bit like putting more pressure on the regime by helping the Iranian people directly. Look, what happened in Poland with Lech Walesa and Solidarity? What happened in South Africa to put an end to apartheid? None of this was as a result of foreign invasion. It was a matter of support directly to the dissidents, to the activists, to the civil society of those countries, giving them an equal footing to be able to have a chance to bring pressure from within. The mechanism of change of regime in Iran is not going to be at the hand of any foreign intervention. In fact, it is my red line. I have always been extremely opposed to any kind of military confrontation or intervention against my country. But I believe that through civil disobedience, through mass protests and labor strikes, we can paralyze the regime and force it to collapse. And following that will be an interim phase by which we should have a constitutional process whereby the Iranian people can elect their representative to a constitutional assembly to debate Iran's future, the constitution, the formal regime, the content, and everything else that is at play. In other words, to have true self-determination. Right now, India is experiencing, as the largest democracy in the world, a process of election. And how much we value the fact that without such freedoms and the ability to choose, citizens are completely voiceless. That is the current situation in Iran. That needs to change. 85 million Iranians have to have an opportunity to speak for themselves. And this is why free countries, particularly democracies, need to support them in this struggle against a regime that has completely taken those freedoms away from Iranians.
But you're talking about basically uprising on the ground, on the streets of Iran, and people had expected that in the fallout of the Mahsa Amini case. There were protests on the ground which started almost immediately. I think it was the autumn of 2022. You had yourself called for protests and mobilization at that point of time. But it didn't really take off beyond a point. So why would you think the situation is different now? When it would be seen to be the world against the... Yes, yeah. Why would the situation be different now?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that for some ingredients being missing, you cannot get to the final result that one wants to obtain. The Iranian people have done their part. They've done all they could under tremendous duress and repression at home. The very same time Iran is waging war against Israel, the regime is cracking down on Iranian women on the streets of Iran. It's maintaining its instrument of repression. But the brave Iranian people, today's Gen Z of Iran, the young generation, stand against them. They still are continuing the fight. What is absent is two things. There still is not a clear and strong leadership from key Western countries to support this movement. And number two, obviously, there has to be the kind of leadership that makes this happen. While the Mahsa Amini Women Life Freedom Movement was certainly a revolutionary state of protest, but the mechanisms of change have to also be in place. This doesn't happen automatically. We need to be able to work with elements within the country. They need to be able to connect with the outside world. They need to have their representation on the international scene so that the world understands exactly how and through what means they can be of help and support this movement. Then we can have a legitimate chance to succeed. But if you have, while you have such a revolution on the streets of Iran, certain governments who are bent on appeasement, who release billions of dollars of money into the hand of a regime that is not going to spend it on the starving Iranian people, but instead spending on its proxies all across the world, how do you expect change to actually happen? The will for change has to come finally in the mind of the outside world. Now, having said that, I've always said to my fellow compatriots, we cannot depend on anybody else but ourselves. However, it will be far simpler and less costly to us if we had the tacit support of the free world. This is what we need right now. That is the missing element. With that in play, a lot will change.